Hey, welcome back to another week right here with Rethink Vertical. I'm Kinsley Jordan, your host, the State Director for the UAS Cluster Initiative. And I tell you what, each episode gets better and better, not only because we're engaging with some of the most prolific organizations, units, businesses that are involved in the UAS industry across the United States, but also because we're learning right on the edge of what's happening. And this week couldn't be more excited to be able to share with you a great interview we had, not only reviewing the AFA Air Force Association event that had a significant presence of UAS, counter UAS, but also the director for ACES for the Oklahoma Commerce Department, who oversees that, Leshia Pearson, had a great conversation of what they saw there at AFA, but also what they're seeing in the state of Oklahoma from a commerce perspective and from the ACES perspective. But if you haven't done it yet, before we get there, make sure you know how to stay connected right here with the UAS Cluster Initiative, because you don't want to miss, if you haven't been over to the website, make sure you get over there. It's just uascluster.com. You can see not only who we are, but also all the different ways you can engage with us, as well as the offerings that we have for you or your business, or somebody that you may know, an organization looking for partnership, collaboration, and growth within the UAS space alone. So without further ado, again, could not be more excited to be able to introduce this segment that we had here on Rethink Vertical, where we had the chance to be able to sit down with Leshia Pearson herself. Now, in case you don't know what ACES is, it's fairly important to be able to understand how that plays into the Oklahoma ecosystem and the surrounding states as well. Now, I'm sure many of you are aware of what ACES is, but in case you're not, it is Oklahoma Commerce Department program led by the Oklahoma Aerospace and Defense team, with resources dedicated specifically to developing and growing the state's aerospace industry. And we had the opportunity to sit down with this amazing lady. Oh, looking the wrong way. This amazing lady, can you see? Right there. Boom. Oh, right there. Leshia Pearson, which is the director for ACES itself. For aerospace and defense. She's worked closely with Oklahoma aerospace companies, organizations to build collaboration and growth opportunities, not only for the state, but also for that industry. And right in the midst of it, we find that the UAS and counter UAS space and the surrounding technologies are right there in the mix of it. She also leads in the delegations of Oklahoma aerospace entities to domestic, international trade shows, which is exactly where we caught up with her this week at the Air Force Association conference at National Harbor, Maryland. So without further ado, let's go over. It was a phenomenal conference. The presence not only of technology, but really a baseline of truly focusing on integration, capability integration when we look at the UAS environment industry itself. So let's head on right over there and catch up with her and myself as we sat down at the Air Force Association conference this week. Hey, welcome back. I'm Kinsley Jordan, again, the director for the UAS Cluster Initiative in Oklahoma. And we're here live at AFA 2024, not only having the opportunity to see what is happening in the Air Force industry with industry and the Air Force, but also I got a super amazing guest from Oklahoma here in the Oklahoma booth here with me, my guest with Rethink Vertical.
Hi, I'm Leshia Pearson. I am the director of the ACES program, Aerospace and Defense with the Oklahoma Department of Commerce.
And that's not a small thing. So when we talk about, we've had guests on before, as you know, not only hearing about what's happening in Oklahoma, the movement for UAS, counter UAS, for cyber autonomy, just trying to bring all the pieces together for industry. And this is a perfect kind of sitting ground to see that here at the Air Force Association conference. It's massive, multiple different floors, meetings over several days. But this is the first presence that Oklahoma has had here at AFA, like with a booth like this, correct? In the last several years?
This is our second year to have a presence here.
Awesome.
Yeah, this year it's a little bigger.
We
had a little bigger space this year, so it was really nice.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of traffic come by.
Yeah.
And wonder why Oklahoma is here.
Yeah.
I think people many times don't remember the kind of military presence we have in the state, number one, and then I think they're also shocked by the amount of aerospace, space, unmanned systems kind of activity that's going on in the state as well.
Yeah. So when you make a really, really great point, because when you talk to people about Oklahoma, and then they're like, yeah, I had a friend who went to that base, and then you mentioned Fort Sill and Tinker and Vance and all of these bases.
MACAP.
You're like, oh my gosh, there is a huge military presence there, and then they start kind of coming on board with, well, what all are you guys doing? So I think first, because I don't know that I don't know that we have had you guys on before on this podcast before. Tell us a little bit about not only ACES but also Commerce. What
what Commerce is doing, because we know there's been a lot of movement in the area in this industry for the last several years. But some of them might not know from the state perspective. They've seen it from the commercial side perspective.
So ACES was created in 2018 through the state legislature, and my thanks to Senator Paul Racino for authoring the bill, the Aerospace Commerce Economic Services Act. Was established actually November 1, 2018, and it was to create a strategic plan for aerospace and defense in the state, as well as grow Oklahoma's aerospace and defense economy. And we were housed in Commerce. We currently have a team of 4, and I mean, and that's our job, is to grow Oklahoma's aerospace and defense industry, economy in the state by supporting existing business in the state, as well as bringing new business to the state.
And that, honestly, that's one of the most amazing things to me, because not only do we have, the UAS cluster, we focus specifically on UAS, but then when you look at the initiatives from the state perspective, the state of Oklahoma cares enough to say, listen, we are mobilizing all of the forces from the state level all the way down to specific industry sectors to align with that. And we're getting a ton of momentum. I mean, this isn't the first time people stop by and say, what is Oklahoma doing here? Because as I understand, you've had other states stop by and say, what are you guys doing here
why
at
are we
AFA?
here? Yeah, and I think that's a really important part of it too. I mean, this is only our second year here, but we've participated in MRO Americas and, some of the other international shows and stuff, and they're seeing Oklahoma consistently out in the aerospace and defense related market, AUVSI, for instance. And so they know that we're not just saying a few things. We're saying it and we're doing it. And we're consistently making an image and an impression in people's minds. And so, especially on economic development, we may talk to somebody today, and it may be 3 years before they come back and say, "Hey, we remember what you said about Oklahoma, and we want to learn more. We're ready to expand or grow or whatever." And so that's kind of why I think this is so important to be here.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, those conversations, especially talking about growing an industry, as we are, our focus, UAS Cluster Initiative, but the growth happens after, I feel like, conversation after conversation after conversation, after checking in, after not hearing from people for a while, after a call, months later, and they're like, hey, we're still interested. And it just takes that consistency of continuing to invest into the ecosystem itself, into the state itself. So what has been this AFA specifically, we're at National Harbor in Maryland, but what is kind of the feel been as people come by the booth, ask about Oklahoma in terms of that military side, the industry itself, and even just aviation aerospace kind of as a whole? What have been the questions or the inputs that you've heard from people coming by?
Right. So there's a variety of responses to that, in all honesty. The military have come by, everybody from, Tinker and the Complex and the 137 Special Operations Wing with the Air National Guard. They've all come by and said, number one, thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for support of the military and for Oklahoma. So I think that's really important. Industry has come by and said, tell us what's going on in the state. We keep hearing positive things. Tell us why. What are you doing to make a difference? And then we've got Oklahoma companies that are coming by and saying, hey, we just did this or this, and we want to make sure that you're involved or you know about it. So it's great at continuing to build those relationships, even with the companies that we have in the state. Seeing all the new technology and the things that we're reading about and hearing about and seeing it on the floor that you can't take pictures of, is really exciting too. And knowing that we're kind of working with some of these companies and trying to help bring some of this technology or attract some of the work or even the repair and overhaul eventually on some of that in the future. It's really exciting to kind of see it all firsthand here.
Well, one of the questions that I guess we've seen just, I don't know, me personally over the last several months of not only talking with companies that are in the UAS space and the aerospace, because those two fronts blend so closely together. Like the line is dotted and very, very thin. Because if something applies, some of the companies that are around here, not promotion at all, but you have companies like Anduril and Blue Halo that are very big in the defense sector overall, but you see them creating technologies that are right hand in hand with UAS, counter UAS, tracking, air tracking, defense systems that are for small air vehicles. And one of the questions that's come up is, yes, there are those efforts to create these vehicles, but what about the industry outside of it? What about the logistics aspect of it? And I know that's also a very large part of Oklahoma is the logistics side of how do we supply? If you do have, as we do have companies come into Oklahoma, and as the ecosystem continues to grow, what does the supply side look like? And that kind of caught me off guard for this AFA because there are several people who are offering analytics about that and being able to assess, hey, what does that pathway look for? But ultimately, my question really comes down to what have you seen, not just in the UAS space, but also in that aerospace defense, some of the questions that people are having as far as what Oklahoma offers, or what does that future, what does a future with them being here in Oklahoma look like?
Sure. On the supply chain side, we're really blessed in the state that during COVID, one of the things that Commerce did, along with the Oklahoma Manufacturing Alliance, was to create Connects, which is a supply chain portal for manufacturers. And so you can do searches and RFPs, and people can go on and put their capabilities in there. And so it kind of helps. Number one, connect Oklahoma companies to potential supply chain resources. That saves them time, money, and builds relationships. But if you can't find those there, you can go outside the state and take a look. But I try and tell, especially, and I'm adamant about this, especially when I talk to Tinker or the base in general, is like if you have a maintenance, repair, or overhaul need, I bet I can find you an Oklahoma company that can do that. Let's just start looking for those kinds of things. On the UAS side, it is going to bring some new interesting kind of technologies. I know that we've got to start, we're going to have to look at some more, additive and those kinds of things. And I think Oklahoma companies are really taking on that new initiative, those new capabilities, and seeing where things are going to go, and looking to the future to add those kinds of that work.
Outside of it being the Air Force, AFA, obviously a huge Air Force presence, but there's a multi-force presence. And with that multi-force presence, you see, Army, the companies that are also advertising and talking to Army and Navy and Air Force and Space Force. But as far as technologies go, a lot of these technologies that we see, as I mentioned before, they are so closely associated to multiple different airframes, not just large, KC-46 and other aircraft, F-35, F-22. But those same systems are integrated into small component systems, and those small component systems, oftentimes we see as small businesses, and the businesses that we see very interested in Oklahoma, simply because Oklahoma is so welcoming. It's so incredibly welcoming in our region, not just Oklahoma, but also immediately around. You have cities that are mobilizing themselves to really assist those companies. So I guess when we think about, if you're a company, if you're watching this and saying, hey, interested in what's happening in the UAS space, but it's really not just the UAS space, it's aerospace kind of as a whole, because those are so closely linked. How best would they be able to follow along and see, hey, what is happening with Commerce? What is Commerce and doing to develop on the aerospace side? How do they stay plugged in with OCAST?
So what's really great about and I'm not going to just talk about the ACE program in general, but because we've created such a great state resource. So not only can you get state resources through Commerce, through state incentives, or the engineering tax credit, the things that the state does, but local communities, they're bringing in, and they can help provide incentives or opportunities or workforce development initiatives. We've got the State Department of Career Tech. We do have OCAST. We have OMA, but we all work together. Our higher ed institutions, we all work together in order to help a business be successful. Whether it's an existing business or a new business to the state, we want to help them be successful. And I think that's kind of a different twist that a lot of other, when we're visiting, especially with new companies, they don't maybe see that in other states, that we're bringing everybody to the table. Utility companies, we bring you to the table so that you can have those conversations all at once, and you know who to follow up with. And And if you don't, then you can come back to us and ask, and we're going to help you make those connections.
Right.
And so, that's kind of a differentiator, I guess, for commerce or for the ACES program. But the other thing is, Oklahoma may not be the richest state as far as being able to offer, incentives. And I know that, you've got a couple of companies, especially in the Tulsa area, that maybe didn't come in with a bunch of incentives to get started on the UAS side, but they wanted the culture.
Yes.
They saw the culture that was being created in Oklahoma, and they needed to be a part of that.
Yes.
And so that's what drove them here, as opposed to maybe cash or whatever right up front.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that's really important.
Yeah, that cannot be undersold, because I've talked to several people who have mentioned having worked with Oklahoma universities, not just Oklahoma University, but Oklahoma State University, Tulsa University.
Right.
Some of the people that are on this floor room that are using and taking those partnerships with universities within Oklahoma, and they talk about how easy it is to get connected with them and how excited the partnerships are. And frankly, honestly, I would just encourage anybody who's not only listening to Rethink Vertical, but also if you're just interested in what's happening in Oklahoma in the UAS space, truly consider culture is massively important. And frankly, that's one of the reasons why we're here at AFA, is because when AFA, these events, whether it's AFA or I know the Army has one, there's AUVSI, there's multiple different events like this. But when you're trying to understand the culture and the climate of where Air Force defense sector is going, or the Army defense sector, in terms of utilizing UAS or counter UAS, you really kind of have to be here to get the feel of it. Like you have to be and understand. So if you haven't tuned in, I highly encourage you follow up with the news and see there was some major announcements that came out from the Secretary of the Air Force, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, as well as some of the partner service partners as well, and that helps to drive the industry itself. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time.
No,
truly
thank you.
appreciate it. We will absolutely hear from you in the future. And shameless plug, coming up November 12th, Tuesday, November 12th, 2024, Aerospace Forum at the Omni Oklahoma City Hotel. Make sure that you get signed up. We'll make sure that we leave the link for you here on the podcast. But again, thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it.
And we'll see you on the next episode.